The alien marketplace stretched across a wide dome of metal and glass, glowing with strange neon signs in languages few humans could read. Hundreds of species had gathered, filling the air with chatter, growls, hisses, and electronic hums. Traders shouted over one another, boasting about their wares, rare minerals, exotic beasts, weapons banned in a dozen star systems. Yet everyone's attention shifted when the sound of a massive gong echoed through the hall. The auction was about to begin. A tall insectoid creature, wearing a cloak of silver threads, stepped onto the raised platform. His long arms opened wide, as his voice carried through the speakers, sharp and commanding. "Welcome, honored buyers. Tonight we bring you treasures unseen, lives worth owning, creatures worth breaking." His words were met with cheers, laughter, and the shuffle of credits being prepared. One by one, cages rolled onto the stage. Some contained fierce animals with snapping jaws. Some contained slaves from forgotten colonies, their eyes empty with defeat. Bids rose and fell like crashing waves. The audience shouted over each other, hungry for ownership. Yet, deep in the back of the room, a single human stood silently. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in plain travel gear. He did not join the shouting. His eyes simply observed, calm and steady. Then came the moment that silenced even the noisiest bidders. A small cage was dragged to the center. Inside stood a girl unlike any being most had ever seen. She was tiny, no taller than a child's toy, her thin frame trembling beneath a ragged cloth. Her skin glowed faintly with a pearly light, as if her body held the reflection of stars. Her eyes were wide, too big for her face, shining with fear and innocence. When she stepped forward, her movements were delicate, careful, almost fragile. The crowd erupted in laughter. "Too small to carry anything," one alien jeered. "She could be crushed by a breath," another mocked. "What a worthless thing, even for free she has no use." The girl flinched with every insult curling in on herself. Her little hands clutched the bars of the cage as if hoping to disappear. The auctioneer sneered, raising his long fingers for silence. "This, my friends, is a curiosity, a runt from a forgotten world. Weak, fragile, pitiful, but perhaps amusing to own, perhaps useful as a decoration. Starting price, 1 single credit." Laughter rolled through the hall again, louder than before. Some threw coins at the stage as a joke. No one raised a hand. The tiny girl's head dropped lower, her small shoulders shaking. Then, from the back of the room, a hand rose, the human's hand. He did not wave, he did not shout. He simply raised his hand, straight and firm, his eyes never leaving the girl's trembling form. The hall fell silent for a moment, then erupted in disbelief. "A human bids?" someone whispered. "For that toy?" Another scoffed. "Surely, he mocks us." The auctioneer blinked, caught off guard, but quickly regained his grin. "Ah, at least one fool sees value. Very well. Do we have another bid? 2 credits?" The room burst into fresh laughter. No one raised a hand. The human's arm stayed up, unwavering. The auctioneer's smile faltered. 3 credits, perhaps 4? Still, silence. The crowd leaned closer, not in interest but in mockery. They wanted to see how long the human would embarrass himself. They wanted to watch him break. But his hand did not move. Minutes passed. His arm remained steady as if carved from stone. Sweat traced a line down his temple, yet his gaze never shifted. He did not lower his hand, not even an inch. The tiny girl in the cage lifted her head. Her glowing eyes locked on his face. Confusion flickered across her expression. Why was this stranger not laughing? Why was he not mocking her weakness like the rest? The crowd grew restless. Whispers turned into growls. A towering reptilian buyer slammed his fist on the armrest of his chair. "This is madness. No one wants the runt. End this farce." But the auctioneer hesitated. There was something unnerving in the human's silence, in his refusal to surrender. The atmosphere shifted. What began as laughter now felt heavier, edged with irritation. The human's hand stayed high. The auctioneer tapped the gavel nervously. "Sold to the human." The gong struck again. The hall fell into uneasy murmurs. No one laughed now. The cage door opened with a screech. The girl stumbled back, her glowing skin trembling. She looked from the auctioneer to the human who had claimed her. Slowly, as if walking into a dream, she stepped forward. The crowd watched, silent now, waiting to see what this strange human would do. He walked forward, each step deliberate, his tall figure cutting through the sea of hostile eyes. He knelt by the cage, lowering his hand, his palm opened, steady and waiting. The girl froze. She shook her head at first, too afraid to trust. Then, with trembling steps, she placed her tiny feet onto his hand. Her body fit easily in his palm, light as a feather. He lifted her gently, placing her on his shoulder. She clung to his collar, still unsure, but no longer alone. The crowd whispered in confusion. Some sneered, others stared in silence. One thing was clear. What had begun as laughter had turned into something else, something the human had forced upon them with nothing more than a raised hand and unbroken will. The auction was over, but the story had only begun. The human stood in the center of the auction floor, the tiny alien girl perched nervously on his shoulder. Around him, the crowd of alien buyers seethed with disbelief. Their mocking laughter had died, replaced with a sharp edge of irritation. The auction was supposed to be entertainment. Yet this silent human had turned it into something else, something none of them could ignore. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to lighten the mood. Well, a sale is a sale. Congratulations, human. A fine choice if one enjoys fragile toys. He forced a smile, but his voice cracked under the weight of the silence. From the front rows, a bulbous creature with 6 slimy arms let out a low growl. Why waste credits on such trash? Are humans so desperate for pity? His words dripped. With contempt, the human did not answer. His face was calm, his eyes steady. His silence was louder than any insult, and that unsettled the crowd more than 1,000 words could have. The girl on his shoulder shifted, clinging to his collar with her tiny hands. She could feel the tension surrounding him. The atmosphere in the dome had changed, sharp, dangerous like the pause before a storm. Another buyer, a reptilian beast with scales like metal, slammed his tail against the ground. You mock this place, human. That runt is worth less than dust. Lower. Your hand, admit your mistake and leave. His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed, but the human did not move. His hand, though no longer raised for bidding, rested against his side in the same firm stillness. The same defiance remained in his posture. His jaw tightened, but his gaze never faltered. Whispers spread through the crowd. He refuses to back down. Does he not understand the insult? Humans think they are bold, but this will cost him. The auctioneer shifted nervously, sensing the hostility rise. Gentlemen, please, let us move to the next item. The human has made his purchase and— Not yet, the reptilian snarled. He rose from his seat, towering over the others. His yellow eyes burned as he pointed a claw at the human. If this human truly wants her, then let him prove it. Let him show us his hand does not waver. A dangerous murmur rippled through the hall. The alien crowd wanted blood, or at least a show. They leaned forward, waiting. The human stood tall, his broad shoulders squared. Slowly, without a word, he lifted his arm again, the same hand he had raised for bidding. He raised it high above, his head straight and unshaking. Gasps echoed across the dome. He was not just keeping the girl. He was declaring something more, something no one could quite understand. His hand cut through the air like a symbol, a banner of resistance. Minutes passed. His arm did not lower. His body did not sway. He stood like a statue of stone. The reptilian growled louder, anger growing with every passing second. You dare mock me, human? You dare stand as if stronger than us? He took a step forward, but other bidders held him back, more interested in seeing how far the human would go. The tiny girl, clinging to his shoulder, looked up at him with wide, glowing eyes. She did not understand this strange man or why he fought for her. Yet as she watched his unmoving arm, she felt something stir inside her, a fragile spark of hope. The auctioneer wiped sweat from his brow, trying to laugh off the tension. "Ah, a stubborn one, are you? Very well. The human keeps his prize. Let us continue." But no one listened. All eyes stayed on the human, on the hand that refused to fall. His silence, his stillness, his defiance, it held the crowd captive, more than any auction ever had. The reptilian bared his teeth. "This is not over, human. You will regret making a mockery of us." Still, the human did not reply. His silence was an unspoken challenge, a declaration that needed no words. The girl pressed her tiny head against his neck, trembling less now. She could feel the steady beat of his heart, hear the breath that never quickened despite the hostile eyes all around. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was safe. When the next gong echoed, signaling the continuation of the auction, the crowd reluctantly turned back to their seats. Yet no one forgot the sight of that raised hand, that quiet defiance. The human lowered his arm at last, but the message had been delivered. He was not backing down. Not then. Not ever. The hall returned to its noise, but beneath it ran an undercurrent of fear and curiosity. Who was this human? Who would not yield? Why had he chosen the weakest creature in the hall, and what did his defiance truly mean? The human said nothing. He simply turned, walking away from the stage with the tiny girl still on his shoulder, her glowing eyes fixed on him with a mix of awe and disbelief. In the silence of her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The human left the stage with the tiny alien girl balanced carefully on his shoulder. At first, the marketplace was quiet. Buyers exchanged uncertain glances, unsure how to react. Then, as the auctioneer prepared the next item, the silence broke. It started as mutters. Ridiculous. An insult to the trade. Humans know. Nothing of value. Then the mutters grew louder, sharper. Voices dripped with irritation. The same crowd that had once laughed at the tiny girl now directed their scorn toward the human. A bloated alien with dripping tendrils slammed his cup against the table, spilling blue liquid across the floor. "We came for worthy prizes, not to watch a human play hero." His slimy fingers twitched with rage. Another bidder, a creature with 6 insect-like eyes, hissed from the shadows. "He mocks us by raising his hand. He acts as if we are fools." The laughter that once filled the dome had turned sour. The air thickened with hostility, and the neon lights above flickered as if sensing the shift. The girl pressed herself closer to the human's neck, her tiny body trembling. She had lived her life being laughed at. But this anger, this was something new, and it was directed at him, not her. The human, however, walked calmly through the aisle. His boots struck the metal floor with steady steps. He did not hurry, did not falter. His silence was unbroken, and that silence infuriated them more than any words could. From the front row, the reptilian buyer rose again, towering above the others. His scales glistened under the artificial lights, each plate as sharp as armor. His tail lashed against the ground with a booming crack. "Enough games. You insult this market, human. Do you believe your raised hand gives you honor? You bought weakness, you bought shame." The crowd roared in agreement. Chairs scraped. Fists pounded on tables. Their laughter was gone. Now only fury echoed in the dome. The auctioneer raised his arms, desperate to calm the storm. "Please, buyers, maintain order. The sale is legal. The credits are accepted. Let us continue." But his voice was drowned by angry shouts. "Throw him out. Strip the runt from him. Humans think they are bold, but they bleed like the rest." The human stopped walking. He turned slowly, his face half hidden in shadow, his eyes sharp and unyielding. He did not speak. He simply looked at them, and for a moment the noise faltered. There was something unsettling in that gaze. Something that suggested he had seen worse than their threats. Something that told them their rage meant nothing to him. The girl's glowing eyes darted between the faces of the crowd and the humans. Steady profile. Her fear twisted into wonder. No one had ever stood between her and their cruelty. No one had dared to face their anger for her. The reptilian bared his teeth, smoke curling from his nostrils. "This is no place for a silent hero. If you think you can stand against us, human, you will regret it. The human did not flinch. His jaw tightened, and though his hand was now at his side, it remained as steady as it had been when raised. That same defiance radiated from his stillness. The dome vibrated with tension. Even the guards shifted uneasily, unsure if they should intervene. At last, the auctioneer slammed the gavel down, his voice cracking through the chaos. "Order! The auction will proceed." His eyes flickered nervously toward the human as though silently pleading with him to leave before blood was spilled. But the human did not leave. He walked forward again, slowly, calmly, the girl clinging to him with every step. Each move he made felt like a direct insult to those who hated him. His silence was not weakness, it was defiance, carved into every line of his body. The crowd did not laugh anymore. Their rage simmered like fire beneath cold ash, waiting for a chance to erupt. And though they shouted, though they threatened, the human gave them nothing. The girl tilted her head, her soft voice almost lost against the roar of the hall. "Why do they hate you?" He answered without turning, his voice low but steady. "Because I refuse to laugh." Her small eyes widened. For the first time in her life, someone had not joined in the mockery. For the first time, someone had chosen her. And now, because of that choice, the human carried the weight of their anger. The auction continued, but the atmosphere had changed forever. Every bid, every shout, every clatter of credits carried the shadow of that defiance. No one could forget the hand that refused to fall. No one could forget the silent human who walked through their fury as though it were nothing. The laughter was gone. All that remained was anger, and the promise of conflict yet to come. The marketplace dome, once filled with noise and laughter, now carried an uneasy silence. Every eye followed the human as he moved through the crowd, the tiny alien girl clinging to his shoulder. She could feel the storm around them, the fury of the bidders who had lost their amusement. The auctioneer's voice echoed again, trying to restart the event. Another cage was rolled forward. Another rare creature presented. Numbers were shouted, credits flashed, but the energy was gone. Every bidder's attention kept drifting back to the human. His calm defiance had poisoned the air, turning curiosity into hostility. The reptilian buyer leaned forward in his seat, his claws scraping against the armrest. His yellow eyes burned with restrained rage. "Look at him," he growled to the others nearby. "He carries weakness as though it were treasure. He dares to shame us." A hulking brute with tusks like iron laughed harshly. "Let him enjoy his little prize. Soon he will learn what it costs to challenge us." The girl tightened her grip on the human's collar. She whispered softly, only for him to hear. "They are angry. They want to hurt you." The human's gaze did not shift. His voice was steady, almost calm. "Let them want." Those words settled deep into her heart, though she barely understood them. The auction continued, but the crowd grew restless. Credits were exchanged, but each slam of the gavel seemed weaker, as though the real outcome of the night no longer depended on the auctioneer's hand, but on the human's silence. Then the reptilian rose from his seat. His massive form cast a shadow across the stage. The hall quieted instantly. His voice rumbled like thunder. "Enough of this farce. Human, you stand among us as if you are equal. You raise your hand and mock our traditions. If you wish to keep the runt, prove that. Your strength is more than a gesture." Gasps spread across the dome. A challenge, not spoken directly but clear in every word. The auctioneer stammered, trying to intervene. "Please, honored buyer, there is no need for conflict." "Silence," the reptilian snapped. His tail slammed against the floor, with a sound like breaking stone. "This human insults us all. He will show his worth or he will crawl from this hall in shame." The crowd stirred, hungry for a spectacle. They leaned forward, their earlier anger now sharpened into excitement. Their laughter had turned to rage, and now rage turned to anticipation. The human stopped walking. Slowly, he turned to face the reptilian. The girl trembled on his shoulder, her glowing skin flickering faintly with fear. She expected him to speak, to argue, to refuse. But instead, the human lifted his arm, high into the air, straight and steady, the same hand that had claimed. Her rose once more. He held it there, silent, unshaking. The hall gasped. It was no weapon, no attack. Yet the gesture carried more weight than steel. He was repeating the moment that had silenced them all before. His hand was not a bid this time. It was a challenge, a declaration that he would not bend, not to laughter, not to anger, not even to threat. Minutes dragged like hours. His arm did not falter. His posture remained unbroken. The reptilian snarled, his chest heaving with fury. "You mock me with silence. Do you think you are unbreakable?" The human gave no answer. His stillness was his reply. The girl stared at him, her small heart pounding. She had seen beings beg for mercy, had seen them crumble under the weight of this very crowd, yet this man, this strange human, stood unshaken. The anger of the hall seemed to bounce off him, powerless against the quiet strength of his raised hand. The crowd whispered, "He does not bend. He dares to stand against the serpent. Is this madness or strength?" The auctioneer gripped his gavel tightly, sweat rolling down his face. He knew the crowd was on the edge of violence, yet he also sensed something deeper. The human's defiance was more than stubbornness. It was spreading, unsettling the confidence of even the boldest buyers. At last, the reptilian let out a furious roar, his tail striking the floor so hard the ground trembled. But he did not attack. Not yet. Something in the human stillness held him back, as though striking now would mean acknowledging defeat. The gong sounded again, marking the close of another sale, though no one cared. All attention stayed on the human. His arm remained raised, until the echoes faded. Then slowly he lowered it, his eyes never leaving the reptilian's glare. The message was clear. He would not yield. The girl exhaled a trembling breath, pressing herself against him. For the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of safety. The storm had not broken yet, but with each silent act of defiance, the human carved a shield around her that no laughter, no anger, no threat had been able to break. And though the crowd seethed, though the reptilian fumed, the moment of tension had passed. The human had not spoken a single word, yet he had won something greater than the auction. He had won fear and respect. The marketplace lights dimmed as the auction dragged on, yet the human no longer cared for what was sold. His focus was on the fragile weight resting against his shoulder. The tiny alien girl clung to him tightly, her glowing skin trembling with every sound of the crowd. To her, each laugh, each hiss, each growl was a reminder of chains and cages. But to him, they were just background noise. He walked with calm steps, unshaken by the hostile stares. The girl tilted her head, her wide eyes searching his face. No one had ever looked at her as he did, not with cruelty, not with greed, but with a silence she could not understand. Her small voice broke the air between them. Why did you choose me?" Her words were fragile, almost too soft to hear, but she asked them with all the courage she had left. The human did not answer at once. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable, then spoke in his steady, quiet tone. "Because you were the only one they laughed at." The girl blinked, confused. "That makes me worthless." He shook his head slowly. "No, that makes them blind." His words struck her deeper than any chain had ever cut. For so long she had believed their laughter was truth. She had accepted that her small body, her weakness, her fear made her nothing. Yet here was someone who refused to see her as a joke. She hugged his collar tighter, her trembling easing just slightly. They found a shadowed corner of the marketplace, away from the crowd. The human lowered himself to sit on a steel crate, then carefully lifted her from his shoulder. He opened his palm, letting her stand there, her small feet barely making a sound against his skin. For a moment she did not move. She looked at him uncertain. expecting him to lock her back in a cage. But he didn't. His hand remained open, steady, waiting. "You're free now," he said simply. She stared, disbelief clouding her glowing eyes. "Free? But I belong to you. The auction means nothing," he interrupted. His voice was firm but not unkind. "They see ownership. I see choice." The girl trembled again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something she had never felt before, the fragile touch of hope. She stepped carefully across his palm, testing her balance. She looked down at the scars across his hand, marks of battles fought long before this night. Without knowing why, she reached down and placed her tiny hand against one of the scars. Her fingers were too small to cover it, but the gesture was enough. The human watched her quietly, letting her explore the strange bond forming between them. He did not smile, but his silence carried weight, a steady assurance that no cage would close around her again while he stood. The girl lowered herself to sit on his hand, curling her legs beneath her. "They will come after you," she whispered. "They are angry. They want me back." "I know," he replied, his tone calm, almost casual. "But they won't have you." She tilted her head. "Why risk so much for me? I am small." "Small," he said, "is not the same as weak." The words echoed in her mind, breaking chains she hadn't realized she still carried. For the first time, her lips curled into a faint smile. It was small, fragile, and uncertain, but real. The human noticed, and though his own face remained composed, there was a shift in his eyes, a flicker of something softer. The fragile bond between them had been born in silence, shaped by defiance, and now strengthened by trust. Above them, the crowd's anger simmered, whispers of revenge echoing through the dome. The reptilian's glare had not faded, and others spoke of teaching the human a lesson. The storm was coming, and both of them knew it. Yet in that quiet corner, the storm felt distant. For the girl, the human's presence was a shield. For the human, her tiny hand against his scar was a promise, a reminder of why he had raised his hand and never lowered it. When the auctioneer's voice echoed again, calling for the next round, the girl leaned closer, her soft voice trembling with determination. "I am not afraid, not while I am with you." The human nodded once. He did not need to answer. His silence was enough. And in that silence, their bond grew, fragile but unbreakable, small yet powerful, the spark of something that even the laughter, the anger, and the threats of the crowd could not extinguish. The auction ended, but the tension in the dome did not fade. The buyers dispersed, yet their voices carried whispers of fury. Credits had been exchanged, creatures had been sold, but the memory of the human's raised hand burned brighter than the gong itself. No one left without speaking of him, and none spoke kindly. Outside the marketplace, the metallic streets glowed with neon lights. Vendors packed their stalls, while shadows stretched long against the steel walls. The human walked steadily through. The crowd, the tiny alien girl perched once more on his shoulder. She clung to him, her glowing eyes darting nervously from face to face. Every passerby seemed a threat. Every shadow another cage. "They are following us," she whispered, her voice shaking. The human did not turn his head, but he had already noticed. 3 shapes moved silently behind them, keeping their distance yet never losing sight. Their steps were heavy, their movements deliberate. "They want to take me back," the girl added, her grip tightening on his collar. "Yes," the human said simply. That single word sent a shiver down her spine. Yet his calm tone steadied her. Fear. He did not sound worried. He sounded ready. They turned into a narrow alley lit by a broken lamp. The walls were covered in alien script, flickering advertisements offering weapons and vices. The human's steps slowed. He placed the girl gently on a crate, his large hand steadying her tiny frame. "Stay here," he said softly. Her eyes widened. "No, they will hurt you." He looked at her for a long moment. I've been hurt before. Before she could argue, the shadows moved. 3 buyers from the auction stepped into the alley. The reptilian was among them, his scales glistening under the weak light. Beside him stood the tusked brute and the slimy creature with dripping tendrils. The reptilian's yellow eyes narrowed. You embarrassed us in front of the whole dome, human. You think you are strong because you lifted your hand. Now we will. Break that hand. The tusked alien snarled, his breath reeking of rot. Leave the runt and walk away. Maybe then you live. The slimy one laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. Or perhaps we take both of you, sell the human for scraps, and keep the toy. The girl gasped, trembling against the crate. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs refused to move. All she could do was watch as the 3 closed in. The human stepped forward, his boots echoing against the steel. He said nothing, his face unreadable, his eyes steady. His silence infuriated them further. The reptilian roared. You think you are unshaken? You think we fear your stillness? Show us your strength, human. The tusked brute charged first, swinging a massive arm. The human sidestepped smoothly, his motion precise, and slammed his fist into the creature's ribs. The impact cracked like thunder. The brute staggered, gasping for air. The slimy one lashed out next, his tendrils whipping toward the human's face. With a sharp motion, the human caught one and yanked, pulling the creature off balance before driving his knee upward. The alien collapsed, sputtering in pain. The reptilian advanced, his claws slicing through the air. The human blocked, sparks flying as claw met flesh and metal plating. The girl covered her glowing eyes, peeking through her fingers in terror. Yet when she looked again, the human was still standing, his hand gripping the reptilian's wrist, unbending. With a swift twist, the reptilian was thrown against the wall, his armored scales denting the steel. He growled in rage, scrambling back to his feet, but the human was already there, his fist pressed against the alien's throat. Enough, the human said at last, his voice calm but edged with steel. The reptilian froze, the weight of that single word crushing him more than the fist at his throat. The silence that followed was deafening. The tusked brute limped backward, clutching his ribs. The slimy one dragged himself away, his tendrils hanging limp. Even the reptilian, proud and furious, lowered his gaze. You will regret this, he hissed. But there was no strength behind the words. The human released him, letting him fall. Without another glance, he turned back to the girl. She stared at him in awe, her glowing eyes wide with disbelief. Slowly, she climbed onto his palm when he reached for her. You fought them all. For me. He lifted her to his shoulder once more, his expression steady. I told you. They won't have you. Her fear melted into something new. Something stronger. Trust. As they walked out of the alley, the neon lights flickered above them, casting long shadows. Behind them, the 3 buyers nursed their wounds, their rage boiling into a deeper grudge. The threat had not ended. It had only just begun. But for the tiny girl, the human's silence and his unshaken strength were enough. For the first time, she believed in something larger than her fear, and for the human, the vow he had made with his raised hand had only grown stronger. The city lights dimmed as night fell, wrapping the metallic streets in shadows. The human walked with steady steps, the tiny alien girl resting lightly on his shoulder. Behind them, the noise of the auction faded into memory, but its echoes still followed. The laughter, the anger, the threats. The storm was not over. The 4 girl's glowing skin shimmered faintly in the dark, like a fragile lantern guiding his path. She was quiet, but her small hands clung tightly to his collar, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. Every so often, her wide eyes scanned the alleys, expecting more enemies to appear. At last, the human stopped. They had reached the edge of the city where steel towers gave way to barren ground. Above them stretched the night sky, filled with endless stars. For the first time since the auction, the air felt calm. He set her down on a flat stone, his large hand steadying her tiny frame. She sat there, legs folded, her glowing eyes reflecting the constellations. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was not heavy this time. It was different, softer, almost gentle. The girl broke it first. "Why did you save me?" Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with something new. Curiosity. The human sat beside her, his gaze fixed on the sky. "Because no one else would." She tilted her head, studying his profile. His face was calm, unreadable, yet his words carried weight. She pressed further. "You risked yourself. They wanted to hurt you. You fought them. For me. Why?" Slowly, he turned his head to meet her eyes. "Because you deserved more than their laughter." Her breath caught. For so long she had believed the mockery was truth, that her small size, her fragility, made her worthless. Yet this human had seen something different. He had raised his hand and never lowered it. Not once. Not even when the world stood against him. Her tiny voice wavered. "I thought I was nothing." He shook his head. "They wanted you to believe that. But you are not nothing, you are alive, that is enough." Tears glimmered at the corners of her glowing eyes. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed, but he did not look away. He did not mock her, did not comfort her with false words. He simply sat there, silent, steady, as if his very presence was enough to carry her pain. The girl leaned closer, her small body trembling less now. "Will they come again?" "Yes," he said simply. "Will you still protect me?" she asked, her voice a whisper. The human's eyes returned to the stars. His jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. "As long as I live." Her heart pounded at those words. She did not know why this stranger would promise so much, but she felt the truth in his tone. It was not empty. It was not fragile. It was a vow carved into silence. She shifted, placing her tiny hand on his massive one. Her glowing fingers rested against his scarred skin, dwarfed by its size. "Then I am not afraid anymore." For the first time that night, something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile, but close. His eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. They sat together under the stars, a strange pair bound by defiance and trust. Around them, the world still plotted, still threatened. But in that quiet moment, they had carved a space of safety. The girl whispered again, her voice steady this time. "You will never lower your hand, will you?" He looked at her, his silence stretching long, heavy with meaning. Then he shook his head once, firm and certain. The girl's glowing eyes widened, her fear replaced by something stronger. Hope. Above them, a shooting star crossed the sky, vanishing into the dark. The human's gaze followed it, but his thoughts remained with the fragile creature beside him. She was no longer just a purchase, no longer just a prize. She was a promise he would keep. The wind carried the faint hum of the city behind them, whispers of enemies already planning revenge. The reptilian's fury, the tusked brute's pain, the slimy creature's hatred. None of it was gone. The threat would return. The storm would rise again. But when it did, the human would be ready, and the girl would not face it alone. For his raised hand had not just claimed her life, it had sworn to protect it. His silence had not been weakness. It had been a vow that could not be broken. The tiny girl leaned against his arm, her glowing eyes closing at last. For the first time in her life, she slept without fear. The human sat watch, unmoving, unshaken, as the night deepened. His presence was her shield. His silence was her promise, and in the quiet beneath the stars, the bond between them was sealed forever.